So today we're going to finish up with our notes on chapter 8, and we'll look at sections 3 and 4 together since both were rather short. So let's first talk about the different categories of labor. There are 4 types of labor that we're going to be looking at: unskilled, semi-skilled, skilled, and professional. When we have unskilled workers, what we're looking at are workers who um, would be manual labor. They don't use any type of machinery to complete their jobs. So, as you read in your book, this would be your ditch digger, or it might be somebody who works in agriculture without any type of machinery. The next category of labor is semi-skilled, and these would be our workers who do use machineries to complete their jobs, but it has to be machinery that did not require much training or schools to master the machinery. The next type of labor would be skilled labor, and now we're starting to introduce machinery and labor that would require skill and education to be able to master. And these skilled workers can work without supervision due to the nature of their education. The highest level of labor would be our professional, and this would be labor that has spent much time in education and has a um, large amount of skill and knowledge that they can apply in their job. When we look at each type of labor from unskilled to professional, what we're looking at is an increase in the investment in human capital. And what we mean by investment in human capital is a further education. So the more education that you gain, the more skills you gain. And it doesn't have to be formal education, like going to college. It could also be a trade school or a community college, anywhere where you're increasing your skill set. That's an investment in human capital. And the connection to pay would be the more we invest in our human capital, the more pay we can expect. Unskilled workers are going to receive the least amount of pay, and then our professional will get the most amount of pay. So continually investing in human capital will result in a higher paycheck. So this just gives us pictures of the different types of labor, from skilled all the way to professional to unskilled. There are exceptions to the rule, especially if we look at actors and actresses, musicians, and athletes. A lot of them are not technically professional because they haven't attended college or some type of an advanced trade school, but their wages will be really high. So these would be our exceptions to the rule, that some of them are more semi-skilled, um, technically according to our economic definition of a skilled worker, but the pay doesn't reflect that. When we look at our unskilled, skilled, semi-skilled, and our professional labor, they are not competing labor grades. So what that means is if you go interview for a job that's aimed at a professional um, category, you will not be competing against semi-skilled labor. Or if you are trying to get a job in an unskilled type of a job, you will not be competing with professionals for that same job. So they don't compete at all. Now, in terms of movement in America, you can continue to move from the unskilled to the semi-skilled to the skilled to the professional. There's nothing that stops you from doing that other than 3 things that aren't government imposed. They tend to just be either an aid or a byproduct of where you live. One of the reasons that it's difficult to move from from unskilled to semi-skilled to skilled to professional would be cost. As you guys know, as you're looking at college, further education is very expensive. So it just might be it's too expensive to afford the education that you need to move up in the labor grade. Another barrier to moving up in your labor grade might be opportunity. We don't have this as much living in Southern California, the opportunities to go to trade schools, community college, universities, they abound in this area. So we do have the opportunity. You're seeing less and less of this being a reason not to move up because of online learning, that even if you were to live in a remote rural area, you still would have the opportunity to receive an education online. The last barrier to being able to move up those labor grades is initiative. You've got to want to do it. You have to want to go to school. You have to have the initiative to get your work done. And sometimes people don't have that initiative, so it keeps them down in terms of a lower labor grade. There are three explanations for why people earn different amounts of money. The first one is the traditional theory, which goes back to Unit 2 when we studied supply and demand. And for our traditional theory, supply and demand determine your wages. If there's a large supply of people with the same skill, they're not going to command a very high wage. But if you have a skill that is very unique and the supply of that skill is very low, then you can demand higher wages. So if you think about maybe in medicine, being some type of a neurologist, there's not a lot of those. So the supply is low, the demand is high, so therefore their wages are higher. Another reason that wages are different would be the theory of negotiated wages. This is when a union gets involved. Unions are very strong, they're very powerful, and they use their power in the bargaining process to be able to get higher wages for their workers. Companies that have unions tend to have to pay their workers more than companies that don't have unions associated with them. Um, the last reason or theory for why wages differ would be the signaling theory. This would be a business that will reward via their salary their employees who have a master's degree, or they get this certificate or that certificate. Basically, it signals that they have more skill, that their skill set is greater, so that they get more money. Some jobs will do this where you have a starting salary, and if you get a said certificate or you work and get your master's, that your salary will automatically go up a certain amount. That would be the signaling theory. There are three reasons that there are different wages depending on where you live in the country. The first one is labor mobility. There are some areas of our country where we'll have more skilled workers than unskilled workers. And that labor mobility might be a resistance of people in one area to go someplace else to work in order to graduate to a higher wage difference. They just may not want to leave the area that they're in. Maybe they have family, or just the process of moving is not attractive. Another reason we have different wages based on where you are in our country is the cost of living. Those of you who are aware, or it's very expensive to live in Orange County, so our salaries tend to be higher than, for example, if you were to have that same job in the Midwest. Another reason for regional wage differences is location. Some locations are they're just great, like living in Orange County, that people are willing to take less of a salary just to be able to live in Orange County. It might work the other way too. You might be paid more if you're willing to maybe move into Alaska. As a whole, over time, unions have been on the decline, and your book gives you three reasons. The first one is employers have worked hard to keep unions out, knowing that they do command higher salaries for their work. For their members, they try to keep the unions out. Another reason we see the decline of unions is women and teens just aren't loyal to unions. As you know, as teenagers, the job you have now very seldomly is the job you want to hold for the rest of your life. So you're not really dedicated to promoting the union or the job that you're in. Women tend to leave the workplace more often because of families, so their loyalty resides to their family and less to unions. And the last reason for the decline of unions is they're just a victim of their own success. Because unions have been successful in gaining higher wages for their workers, in turn, the employer sometimes has to charge more for their products, and then the demand for their products goes down, and the need for as many employees goes down too, and then the number of people in that union starts to decline.